Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and on those in the tombs bestowing life. Christos anesti ec necron thanato, thanaton patisas, getis sentis mnimas isoin charis amenos. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and on those in the tombs bestowing life.
Greetings, my dear friends in Christ. I was looking at some of the designs that we have for the ultimate completion of our monastery. And it reminded me of when we first moved to Vashon Island back in 1988. And we were living in a little rental house, and we had this tiny, tiny little room as our chapel. It was not much bigger than a walk-in closet. And we lived there for quite a few years. And just as we were thinking, well, this isn't probably going to work out, maybe we should go to Mount Athos, and I asked my late spiritual father, Blessed Archimandrite Dimitri of Santa Rosa, for a blessing for Father Paul and I to go to Mount Athos to live. And I remember him surprising me and saying, no, your salvation is on Vashon Island. And in my mind, I'm saying, what? It just seemed ludicrous. We had no income. We had no place that we owned. It just seemed like, how is this ever going to be? But ultimately, it was God's will, and here we are. And we were given 5 acres initially, and then we acquired the remaining 11 acres, so we have 16 acres surrounded on 2 sides by a 40-acre watershed. Perfect place. One of my old friends from college visited once as soon as we acquired the land and had cleared it. And he said that it reminded him of when we were in college. I said someday I wanted to live on an island in a forest communally. And here we are. I'm living this life. Lots of times when people come to visit this monastery, and they are very taken by the beauty of the place. We have this really lovely little courtyard surrounded by one side. To the right is our library. Straight ahead, facing east, is our church, dedicated to the holy protection of the Virgin. To the left of the center of the plaza is our bookstore and offices and my study. And then behind me, as I'm looking east, would be the trapeza. And then we have these monastic cells that kind of fan out from there. When I first designed this whole layout of the buildings, I told our architect who volunteered his services that I really wanted this place to look like a little village that was plucked down here. Scandinavian even, because Seattle had such a large Scandinavian community at the time. I thought it would be really neat if people would come and visit and they would see Scandinavia in our architecture, and that's exactly what we have. One of the things that I think is really important as I'm describing this whole process of slowly, little by little, we built buildings. Father Paul and I initially built a tiny little chapel, which we now have dedicated to St. John of San Francisco. But that was the only place we had for our liturgy for a long time. Tiny, tiny little place. If you come and visit us, you can see it's still there. Then we built one small monastic cell, which ultimately is the cell that our Father Martin occupies. And we kind of went from there, but Father Paul and I were living in an old single-wide trailer house that was about 35 years old when we acquired it. And that was quite an adventure. It was sort of like experiencing being on this rather well-to-do island, being the poor white trash of the community. It just seemed kind of funny. And then eventually there was an heiress that left us a condominium that we cashed in on to have money for the future project. And we ended up hiring a contractor that came highly recommended to us, and the man turned out to be a thief. and he stole $47,000 from us. And when he was finally apprehended, I asked to go to the court when he was being arraigned and going to be sentenced. And I heard that he was going to be sentenced to about 7 years in prison. And I asked to speak before the judge. And I turned to this man and I said, you know, you have the skills to make a good contribution to society. And I want to see that. So I'm not really interested in seeing you rotting away in prison and learning all the negative things you could do when you get out, but rather to have a short sentence so you can get out and make something of yourself and contribute to society as I know you can do. And then I hugged him. So he got 3.5 years instead of 7. And it was in the newspapers. And all of a sudden we had we were descended upon by people on this island who wanted to help. And so the ultimate thing that happened from all of this is that the money we had was enough. The money we had left over that he hadn't stolen was just enough to buy the supplies we needed, the lumber and everything else. So we had, for 1 entire year, fellow Vashon Islanders working on this property, building our buildings for nothing. And when 1 or 2 guys might be off to do something else, somebody else was ready to step right in, and we literally had people here from the island Monday through Friday for a whole year. And we ended up having these beautiful buildings. Some of them were firefighters. I remember a firefighter from Seattle put up one of the biggest beams in our trapeza. It was wonderful, and we just fed them, and they were here. And as the chancellor of our diocese told me at the time, Father Tryphon said, you know, this is this was a miracle from God, and it was like giving the islanders ownership in this monastery because they contributed in such a big way. And I bring this up because I want to share with you just a couple of images of the future plans for this place. This is looking from the plaza that I just described, but this shows some changes in the dome, and it shows the addition of a bell tower, so that more people in our neighborhood can hear the bells because they will be higher, and it will really finish off the church as it should have been to begin with. And then this is a photo, an aerial photo of everything, which shows right here the formal holy gate that will come through here, and then on this side will be a reception room that will serve coffee and have restrooms and a porch, and people can sit in here when they're visiting the monastery. And then the rest of the buildings you see with, again, the new bell tower here. So, one of the things that this really connects to that I want to share with all of you is the fact that this is not just a bunch of buildings that were put up. It took time. The last building that we have here that was completed was the building that has our bookstore and my study in our office. That was the very last one. And that was done by a whole new group of volunteers. It was really an amazing feat. But what it really did is, in my mind, it exemplified the importance of our salvation and how salvation is a corporate thing. So God knew in his divine wisdom that this monastery was needed on this island. It was needed. And he knew that my salvation depended on being here, and here I am. But what it also meant was that God was building this place. It wasn't me. It wasn't a committee. God built this place. And now God is working on me and the other monks that are living here, as well as all the people that come as pilgrims to the monastery. He's working on all of us. So just as we are still trying to raise the money to complete the project here and build our guest houses and our workshop and other things that we really need, the bell tower. But that's not the focus of our lives. Our focus is on trying to be better monks and trying to be better Christians and trying our best to display the love of Christ to pilgrims who come here and to give service to them and to encourage them. So as I have shared with you the construction of this monastery to date, I think it's clear that this place didn't just pop up all at once. There wasn't some big summer week where all these guys came in, contractors, and put in the foundations, and then the next week they were all here and starting to build construct the buildings. That was not the way it happened. It was over a long period of time, even before that 1 year of miracle when all our fellow islanders completed the project here. It was a miracle, but it took time and it took focus. Just as it takes time and focus on our parts to grow spiritually and to let God build upon the foundation that He has already set with us when we were baptized into the Orthodox Church. And it's also, just as all those individuals on our island came forward to help the monks in our time of difficulty and trial, so too each one of us is called by the Lord to keep our eye out for people in the church, in the faith, in our community, our neighbors, our relatives, our friends, our co-workers, who just might be needing help with the construction of their souls and the healing of their bodies. This is what it is about. It's a long-term effort. It's not just an overnight thing. The monastery wasn't constructed in some factory and then lowered down here by helicopters. And there's still changes that are being made to this place, little by little. Just as there are changes being made in each one of the monks that resides in this monastery. And this is this place where people come for healing, even if it's just a weekend, or they come only for Sunday liturgy from off island. It's interesting how many people come from off island that are here essentially for the whole day. They're here for the hours, they're here for the divine liturgy, they're here for the trapezoid meal, and they're here for the class that Father Nicodemus teaches. So this is pretty much a whole day that people give to being here. And they wouldn't be doing it if they were guilt-tripped to doing it. They're doing it because they feel changes happening in their hearts. And they see the love that others have for them here, whether it's the monks or fellow Orthodox Christians who come here. And we even see young people coming here who really aren't religious and aren't interested, but all of a sudden they're thinking, wow, I had no idea that there was a Christian faith like this. And they discover Christianity and Christ for the very first time in the faces of the monks and in the beauty of the divine liturgy and the services that we have here and the chanting, all of that. So, I am a work in progress, and so are you. May God help us all.
Both now and ever and unto the ages of ages. Amen. Only begotten Son and immortal Word of God,